All right. So now we're going to start my very first broadcast. All right. Okay, so here I am, recording my very first test run for my new GMU radio show. That's where I am right now in the GMU practice studio, recording for my brand new radio show. So just testing out my voice for the very first time on the air. So, how I wanted to start this all out is first of all saying hello, everyone. My name is Alex Madajian. I am a government international studies major with a concentration in politics, philosophy, and economics here at the Schar School at George Mason University. Very excited to be here and very excited to be on the air with you guys. So, today I was hoping that we could look a little bit into what is happening in the world right now. I haven't come up with an official name for my show, but I'm thinking it'll be something along the lines of I just don't understand. Because, frankly, folks, I just don't understand a lot of people and how they react to how the world is acting. I understand a few things, I just don't understand how people are reacting to it. And so that's basically the bent that I have. I don't understand what is going on. But I can do a pretty good job of telling you what is going on and what my thoughts are and why everything makes absolutely no sense. I'll start off today talking a little bit about China, a little bit of international knowledge for you guys. So the big news that's happening in China, obviously there's the Trump tariff wars, but the big thing that should be concerning everyone is the Hong Kong controversy. Now, for those of you who are unaware, Hong Kong has been protesting for many, many, many weeks. It's one of the longest running protests. Every weekend, massive amount, thousands of people are gathering in this one city and protesting the fact that they very well may lose all of their freedoms and all of their civil rights because Hong Kong is sort of a bastion of freedom in the giant autocracy known as China. Now, you may think, oh, well, obviously we should support the people who are in China, I mean, or specifically Hong Kong. I mean, they sound kind of desperate because, I just recently, I believe last weekend, they shot live ammunition into a crowd of people. I mean, the police are getting very serious. China is amassing a military on the border. More on that in a second. But this is something that I just don't understand. There, a person in the NBA, National Basketball Association, Daryl Morey, I believe he's a manager for the Rockets, tweeted in support of the Hong Kong supporters, tweeting out, quote, "Fight for freedom, stand with Hong Kong." That's great. Totally agree with that. Unfortunately, though, he deleted it. Why? I just don't understand why. Well, the Chinese government actually got rather, how shall we say, ticked off at this move. The Chinese government consulate in Houston condemned the tweet by saying anybody with conscience would support efforts to safeguard Hong Kong's social stability, meaning the poor old Chinese government is upset that there are people protesting their autocratic, oppressive, evil, censoring regime. Oh no. So, in just a sickening act of cowardice, not only did Mr. Daryl delete his tweet and profusely apologize, kiss the boot of the ever gracious Chinese government, but so did the National Basketball Association. 2 days later, after the tweet, the NBA made a statement saying, quote, "We have a great respect for the history and culture of China." Really, You like that the fact that they censor people's speech? You like the fact that they will literally imprison the Uyghurs in the northeastern province, Xinjiang, I believe? You like that they torture people for their religious beliefs? Is that something to respect? Well, I'm all for respecting cultures, but there's nothing brave or loving about respecting evil, everything within a culture, especially when that culture has evil aspects to it. China hates freedom. They have not been a bastion of freedom in civilization. They have been one of the, up there with Russia, with one of the most anti freedom governments out there. So, why on earth would the NBA and the managers and all these different people be fawning and kissing the boot of great leader, glorious leader Xi Jinping, chairman of the Chinese Communist Party? The reason why is because fans are upset. And gee williker whiz, would you look at that? It all comes down to business. See, it's not about standing up for what's right. It's not about doing what's good. It's really heartbreaking, actually. These corporate overlords have these Chinese corporate overlords have basically told the NBA, no, you are not allowed to speak in favor of freedom. You have to be, and I mean, it's if you read the full statement, they go on to say how, oh well, there's many sides to this very complex issue. There are two sides, okay? There's only two sides to this complex issue. There's the side of freedom, and there's the side of oppression. There are very few black and white instances in civilization, in society and culture. This is one of those very clear instances. In Jim Crow era, there are two sides. You either are racist with for Jim Crow laws, Jim Crow regulations, and things like that, or you are for equality. There's not there. There really wasn't a middle ground here. There wasn't these great complexities and all. When you boil it, as far as the essentials go, it's a very simple concept. Same thing here. And then to top it all, to make it even more absurd, we have Dennis Rodman, who is NBA player, former basketball player. For some reason, he is a big North Korea fan. He hangs out in North Korea. And because of his experience in the one of literally the most oppressive countries in the world, he said that he'd make a great diplomat for bridging the divide and just bringing people together. What part of being together with an anti-freedom government, an oppressive regime, and a freedom-loving society, namely Hong Kong, where is the bringing together? Where is the commonality here? They stand for exactly the opposite. I'm a little flabbergasted at this. It's just insulting and really unfortunate, and to be quite frank, it's not helpful. There is nothing loving and there is nothing kind about bringing a good person to compromise their good beliefs with an evil person and their evil beliefs. Can you imagine during World War II, somebody just said, well, they're Nazis, and, we may stand for freedom and, sanctity of Jewish life and all those things, but we just need to come together. Nobody in their right mind would say that, both then and today. Nobody, well, except I believe Neville Chamberlain, he said that, but it kind of blew up in his face. And the people that were saying that during that time have been just swept under the rug by history. It's as simple as that. It's really sad to see them fold over after this. Another thing that really bothers me about China is their military presence. This is something that I've been trying to follow closely, and I really encourage everyone to follow even more closely too as well. Not only are they amassing troops at the border of Hong Kong, which is really scary. I mean, one time the Chinese government shoots into a crowd of protesters, and I think maybe one person died, but people definitely got hurt, and that really could have been far, far worse. Thank God it wasn't truly, murderous Tiananmen Square all over again. But nevertheless, it's really concerning that we could be seeing military action here. Now, I understand that there's a huge controversy about, we just got pulled out of Syria. Just recently, Trump pulled our troops out of Syria, and, we're already debating that, whether or not that was good or bad. Most people seem to think that wasn't good, but a lot of his base seems to think it was, and I'm not going to get too far into that because that distracts us from this right here. If the Hong Kong protesters have been waving American flags, they've been singing American songs. It kind of makes the United States look bad if we just allow the Chinese government to roll over them, steamroll over them. They've already made major investments in promoting their military force in the Pacific. The United States, we do have a ridiculously competent military. We have, and we spend something like more than all the preceding countries, top 10 countries in the world combined. We spend more money than they do on defense. And we have an astronomically high amount of bases all throughout the United States. We have easily the best trained soldiers, one of the biggest armies, militaries, a lot of advantages. However, we have put a lot of resources all around the world, a lot in the Middle East, a lot in Europe, and a lot in Asia. However, China, they are still a very strong military force, not as much as the United States. However, they have focused so much of their resources on developing in the Pacific so they can become a truly dominant power there. Now, I'm not suggesting that they're going to declare war anytime soon because China only cares about one thing, and that's business. And war is not good for business. It just is not good for business. However, military investments are very good for making threats and establishing power. And that is something that China is and has always been very, very interested in. So, this is just something people need to keep in mind, that Taiwan is very much at risk. Hong Kong is very much at risk. South Korea and Japan are very much at risk. Even though we have military bases there, it's not necessarily, if China does things right, and if the United States does spread out its military force broadly, which is what we kind of been doing, then we really are in a bit of a very, very tricky spot. And I'm rather concerned about that. And I think that a lot of people, really ought to be concerned about that. Um, I'm going to move on now to culture, move on from this just delightful turn of events to culture. Specifically, there's this study that came out. It's commissioned by Evite and OnePoll. Commissioned by Evite and then carried out by OnePoll.uk. The average American hasn't made a friend in 5 years. So it's kind of funny. I made you think that I was going to transition from something really sad and scary and depressing to something just like, boom, gut punch. Well, that's what I'm doing. I've kind of just transferred us to this very, very sad fact that people aren't making friends anymore. And obviously, it's just a poll. Even though it polled about 2,000 participants, I really don't trust polls. I never have. I'm not, but at the same time, I really can't denounce this as inaccurate. Look, polls, they are usually wrong. And there's always something wrong. I think researchers totally overvalue polls. And I'm not saying that this is completely defunct. To a certain degree, at least in the United States, it's true. People in the US are just very cautious in making friends. We're not necessarily bad at making friends. To a certain degree we are. We just are unwilling to make friends, as far as I can tell from observing. According to this poll, nearly half of people only keep in touch with friends from, or report that they still keep in touch with friends from high school, close friends from high school. And it kind of goes to show that one way that Americans make friends is just by being with them for a long time. So especially when we're younger, when we're more trusting, young people typically are more trusting than older people. It seems less likely to make friends as we get older. And I think that's unfortunate, but that just seems to be a reality of the average American individual. So one thing that I really recommend people just be more open. People just be more, maybe whether or not this poll is true, I guess for the most part is irrelevant. What really matters is what you take to heart. If you hear that most Americans don't make a new friend in 5 years, and don't do anything about that, don't think about that, then I mean that's a really sad thing. I think that Americans should be more inclined to go out and make friends. According to this poll, 32% reported that they were betrayed by a friend. And interestingly, the top five qualities that they reported they value in a friend are honesty, trust, loyalty, kindness, and sense of humor, in that order. I found really interesting that the top two are basically synonyms, honesty and trust. And the third, you could argue, is synonym, loyalty. So, honesty, trust, loyalty are the top three according to this poll. Go back to that other statistic, 32%, almost a third, say they felt betrayed by a friend at some point in their life. If you want to make friends, it seems like the secret sauce is honesty and trust and being loyal to them. Look, I really can't tell you a truer truth than, look, you got to be good to your friends. You just got to be good to your friends. There's nothing more pertinent, nothing more valuable than just being true to your friends. And if you're going to take one thing away from this study, dear goodness, I really hope it be that please, please, please be good to your friends and continue to go out and make friends and be it, well, have a sense of humor, be a little bit more kind and loyal. You don't have to be of a political affiliation or religion or whatnot. I'm sure sharing similar interest helps, or shared experiences helps, but when it comes down to it, it seems the things that really matter are trust at the end of it, at least according, if that's, of course, if you believe that polls are to be believed. Now, I want to talk a little bit about a recent tragedy that happened. This is very recent, hot off the news, so it probably is developing much more even as I speak. There were recent attacks in Germany. These were anti-Semitic attacks, and what makes them truly egregious is that it was on Yom Kippur, the holiest day for the Jewish people in the year. I get so worked up. I get really, really, really annoyed when people kind of put the whole, oh well, we had, this is Germany. Jewish attacks happening in Germany. I want to say that one more time. Jewish attacks happening in Germany. Remember the last time this happened? Officials actually said that the only other time that that government officials warned people not to wear yarmulkes, the hats that Jews wear. This is the first time since the 30s that they were warned not to wear those in public. You know what happened during that time? The guy with the mustache, remember that? That's what it boggles my mind. And it really upsets me to my stomach to think that just for being Jewish, you can get attacked in a place that you would assume learned their lesson. Now, there's a lot of ways to take the story. First, let me actually tell you what happened in the story. So, it's been reported, I believe, by UK Mail. At least at the time I last checked, 2 people have died via shotgun attack at a synagogue. Now, I guess the one, if you can call it kernel of truth, is that there was something like 70 or 80 people in this synagogue that was attacked. And I guess the good thing is that not more people died. That's really impressive, that with a shotgun, and apparently they were armed with grenades. They actually threw grenades into a cemetery, so it's kind of proof that they weren't so much trying to inflict mass amount of casualties as much as they're trying to make a statement that they just vitriolically hate Jewish people, which I've never understood anti-Semitism, to be quite frank. The Jewish people are some of the best people I've ever met. I'm really quite boggled by it. Some of my most adored friends are Jewish, and I myself am an ethnic Armenian. And because we share a similar history, I feel there's a lot of connection and a lot of empathy that I can share with the Jewish people. So this really, really can rile me up a little bit. Anyway, so apparently they threw some grenades into a cemetery right next to the synagogue, probably because, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Because one of the reasons why these killers and these psychopaths do what they do is because they want to get attention, which is why I have no intention of actually telling you the person's name, because frankly, that scumbag does not deserve any attention at all. If that's what their intent was to get attention, I want to give them as little as possible. But I do want to emphasize this, that folks, there really needs to be better realization that I think, globally speaking, the minority most at risk are the Jewish people. Uh, and I think they have been historically. I really have a tough time. I mean, you could argue Christians, I suppose, but I mean, then it depends on how you formulate your data. You're talking population, you're talking massive amounts of or quantity. Uh, and to be kind of frank, it's kind of stupid to argue who has suffered the most. It's just always a stupid road to go down. I think we can agree, though, this is a very untalked about point that it bothers me. Nobody talks about this. Anti-Semitism is an actual problem in Europe, and it's also a problem in New York, which boggles my mind too. They have such a large Jewish population there. You would think that they would have just overcome, that they would learn to live together. But no, as it turns out, there's a rise in anti-Semitism in New York and in Germany. Now, I'll give you my theory as to why there's a rise in anti-Semitism in Germany. It's because for the last 70 years or so, since post-Nazi regime, there has been a massive amount to get rid of, and basically German politics is run by guilt over the Holocaust. And that's completely understandable. However, a lot of this guilt is self-inflicted by the government on itself, by the society onto itself. And to a certain degree, I can understand you would feel massively guilty knowing, yeah, my grandfather, he helped kill the Jewish people. He really wanted to see a world without the Jewish people. That has a massive existential burden on the soul, and it doesn't. Now, I'm not saying that it justifies anti-Semitism. It absolutely doesn't. But I think that if you compress that guilt, because guilt by its nature does not bring healing. It might bring understanding, but does not bring healing. I think that understanding is a place to approach it, but guilt never is. And I think that they've sowed seeds of guilt and never seeds of healing, and at least, or not enough seeds of healing. So it's very, very. So I think that this rise in anti-Semitism in Germany is mostly a result of people being fed up with told that they should feel guilty. And I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form that they shouldn't feel guilty, because obviously genocide of the Jewish people is a horrific and awful, terrible thing. But this is I'm left to wonder: is this what happens when we push and tell people that something is wrong, something that pretty much all of the German population is not responsible for the Holocaust. Pretty much all of the perpetrators are dead. It's just the children and the grandchildren now. And I mean, that's got to do something. And I really think that there's a better way to go about this. I really do. And the reason why is we can see the fruits have come to ripen. They weren't doing whatever they did. It's not being done right. I remember a professor at the last school I went to talk about how Germany has done such a great job of exorcising that Nazi demon. Clearly not. Clearly not, because this is actually very. I'm scared to say this is actually kind of becoming more normal in Europe. Like, we see this in France, we see this in England, all over the Eastern Europe, we see a rise in anti-Semitic attacks. I can't remember where I saw it. I think 2017 was like a huge landmark rise in anti-Semitism, apparently, both in the U.S. and abroad, which is it's really, really, we're not doing something right. That's the bottom line, is that we're not doing something right because I mean, this is so medieval. Hating people because they're Jewish? I've never I've never understood how you can hate somebody for being Jewish. I've just it, it, it bothers me so much. I better move on before I start getting really frustrated. Anyway, moving on, I want to talk a little bit about about the United States, and there are several SCOTUS cases that I believe today, I'm recording right now on Wednesday, will be heard by SCOTUS. They are Zarda v. Altitude Express, which is the skydiver case. I'll give you the official name and the shorthand name. And then there's also Harris Funeral Homes versus EEPC, and then there's Boscock versus Clayton County, Georgia. So, basic summary of the three cases: Zarda v. Altitude Express, a skydiver instructor. What they do when they skydive is they strap you. If you're just beginner, they strap you to an actual expert. So when they jump from the plane, you're strapped to them, and you feel much more secure. And obviously, they're better at pulling the parachute cord. So so in this particular case, there was a skydiving instructor who just so happened to be gay. He was, and then he made some comment to this one female who was jumping, something along the lines of, "Don't worry, I'm gay," And then I think she alleged that he touched her inappropriately, made some inappropriate comments. It's a lot. A lot of that is he said, she said. But the real importance of this case is that this instructor got fired, and he alleges he's fired because he was gay. And whether or not that's the case will soon be decided by the Supreme Court, because as we always know, they in their infinite wisdom never get any case wrong. They always are absolutely right, whatever they decree. The second case is Harris Funeral Homes versus EEPC. Now, I actually did a little bit of reporting for this a couple months ago when I believe they were selected by the Supreme Court to be heard. That was when I was a journalist on Capitol Hill. So I was part of the press conference in which Alliance Defending Freedom, which is representing Harris Funeral Homes, was announcing their position and what they were going to do, and effectively what they believed their case was going to be. So, of the three cases, I know the most about the second one, and that's what I'm mostly going to be talking about because all three of them are effectively come in the same grain. They run in the same grain. Third one, Bosack versus Clayton County, Georgia. Basically, this county in Georgia fired this one employee because it's very vague. I haven't seen the exact details, but he claims he was just expressing himself as a gay person. They claim that he was acting inappropriately. The details to me are very unclear on that, but I want to focus mostly on the second case. So in Harris Funeral Homes versus EEPC, basically what happened is they are a funeral home and they have a dress code. One employee who's worked there for several years decided, that they were not born the way they had a transition basically of how they wanted to express their gender. So although this individual came to work many times dressed as a man, wearing a suit, one day this individual comes to work in a dress, and this got the management very upset because they were very concerned about how the customers would react and that might make them feel uncomfortable, and effectively they fired this person. So from the I forgot which group is defending basically that's the Employment Commission people. They're based. I can't remember who's defending them. I think it just might be the government. But Alliance Defending Freedom is defending Harris Funeral Homes, and their case is basically that the worker has the right to, or the employer has the right to fire whoever they want, whoever they do not think is servicing their customers. So because this individual dressed in a way that does not appear to fit what they were born as, it might make some people feel uncomfortable. That's effectively how they're arguing that they have the right to fire somebody who is upsetting their customers. Now, on the opposite side, the argument is, well, you guys are firing this individual because they're transgender, and then the reason why this has climbed up so much is because of an ambiguity in the law, and that ambiguity is does and basically all three of these have something to do with do employers have the right to fire somebody because they come out LGBT, something along those lines. So first of all of them are basically appealing to the Civil Rights Act. And the Civil Rights specifically says, quote, it's unlawful to discriminate against any individual because of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. So specifically focusing in on sex, that has not really been defined by the Supreme Court. And although it has been very defined in academia and in culture, it's not really as clearly legally defined. That's why the Democrats have been pushing for the Equality Act, because, well, with the Equality Act, we get, for those of you who do not know, the Equality Act basically adds sexual orientation and also I believe gender identity to the Equality Act. So it explicitly adds those two things in. Excuse me. So now this is something interesting that I found in 2017. As of 2017, all 11 federal court of appeals ruled that sex does not include sexual orientation. So it seems that the precedent has kind of already been set, and it seems very unlikely that SCOTUS is just going to rule that sex inside of the Civil Rights Act means sexual identity or sexual orientation and gender identity, all that. And to a certain degree, I can understand why they wouldn't want to do that, because that has a profound implication on any other legal document that has anything to do that says the word sex when they really mean man or woman. They don't mean gender expressions beyond those two things. Like for example, women's sports. A legal document may say so and so. Only people of the female sex, people born as women, may participate in the women's sports league. And you can see that has a profound impact when men play in these sports. When people born as men transition to female, decide to play in these leagues, because of their naturally disposed testosterone, they absolutely dominate. I believe the top cyclist in the world is a man who transitioned to women. I think so. There's a couple other examples of men, like kickboxing. For the female dominated play. I mean, if there's a person born as a man transition to a woman competes there, it's basically domestic abuse. I don't see how men literally pummeling these poor. I mean, literally. I mean, to the point where they're becoming these bloody pulps. It's almost legalizing domestic abuse. That's the kind of implication we're talking here. Legalizing domestic abuse. That's if the court was to rule that sex inside the Title VII, which is the Civil Rights Act, if sex is defined also include as gender and identity expression. Now, if you very much are an LGBT advocate, very big on the LGBT, well, you don't need the court to redefine the law. That this is known as legislating from the bench. Just pass the Equality Act, and that takes care of just about everything as far as LGBT advocates are concerned. I think that it would come back to bite everybody effectively if the court just makes. I don't even think that it's going to be a tight I mean, it might be tight just because there's so much social pressure um, being placed on the court to rule in a certain way. 206 corporations have lobbied to amend the Civil Rights Act, their Title 7. 206 corporations. You would think that people would get upset that, oh, corporations are affecting our society and they're lobbying it. No, apparently it's okay because we like it when corporations do what we like them to do. I mean, okay, that's fine. I mean, but it's not just any corporations. We're talking Apple, Amazon, a couple others. Don't quite come to mind right immediately. That's fine. They're, you know, who really cares anyway? Probably not that important corporate, you know. But in all seriousness, they are kind of big corporations, kind of big, um, and they're 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 striving to change our law to make it's not just through the proper means. The proper means would be you get Congress to pass said bill, the president signs it, and that's that. Then it's law. That's that. But this is not the case. They're trying to it bothers me that they're trying to get a particular agenda to be legislated from the bench, not through the proper means, not by voting, not by that, but to get our mini gods, which is what I refer to as SCOTUS, because whatever they decree, it's just set in stone, and we can't touch it. It's perfect. It's kind of, you know how long it took to undo Dred Scott? I mean, literally, that's one of the first examples of legislating from the bench, of creating and pontificating what legislation means just because you are on SCOTUS and because you want it to be, rather than actually having it pass through Congress, which would, you know, I don't know, require support. Part of the, you know, we have a diverse country, and part of the beauty of that is you don't just need a massive amount of people, you need a massive amount of different people to agree on something for it to become a reality. You can't just do it if one minority wants it, or even a majority wants it. You need a majority of different people of different opposing thoughts and cultures and ideas to agree on something for it to become a reality. That's what makes our Constitution so brilliant, so well crafted. And that's kind of what scares me about this legislating from the bench ideal, is just we don't like it, fine. We will just make it so via our mini gods, our SCOTUS gods. Frankly, though, I really don't think that I'm going to be rather surprised if it comes down to the wire. I would expect a couple of the more liberal or left-leaning judges to also side in favor of not amending the Title VII, but we'll see. We probably won't find out for a couple more months. Oh, those SCOTUS decisions. Oh, how they make me sit in anguish and wait. Oh. I guess, well, that's just too bad. So, another thing I guess I inevitably have to talk about, so sad, would be impeachment. So, we all know about impeachment, but if you don't know because you're hiding under a rock like a good little American, then I will explain it to you. Or even if you're not an American, you're just here at George Mason University, an international student who could care less about it, well, don't worry, I will tell you anyway. So, what makes it so significant is it kind of has only happened like 3 other times in American history, with Johnson, Nixon, and Clinton, is the House has started the impeachment process. So basically, they wanted to do it over the Mueller investigation, which effectively was an investigation to prove that the Trump campaign was working with the Russian government in order to influence our elections. However, the Mueller report concluded that there was no substantial evidence to tie, or criminally investigatable evidence or proof to tie the Trump campaign did indeed collude with Russia, knowingly collude with Russia and work together with Russia to influence the 2016 election. Now, with this new impeachment was caused by a whistleblower. A little bit more on whistleblower in just a sec, but effectively this whistleblower said that Trump was in a call with the Ukrainian president, and he offered a quid pro quo. Not just any quid pro quo, meaning, for those who don't speak Latin, I do this for you and you do that. You do this for me. That's basically what a quid pro quo is. Basically, this whistleblower alleged that the president had just got worked with the Ukrainian government to dig up dirt on Joe Biden to, and in return, Trump would offer Ukraine some aid, effectively defense aid, which is they very much need because Russia is right there, and Ukraine doesn't want to be annexed by Russia, just like Crimea was. So that's basically a summary of the whole thing. Here's my problem with a lot of it, and then I'll get into what's new and what's happening and what are the developments of it. So first of all, I'm just completely bedazzled and bewildered that most people have no idea what a quid pro quo is. No idea whatsoever. So, first of all, there's nothing illegal about a quid pro quo, especially if it's with an ally. In fact, that's a good thing that we're doing quid pro quos. That's literally what trade is. That's literally what you meet a foreign head of state for, is to do some form of a quid pro quo. I do this for you, you do that for me. Great, we're buddies. There's nothing illegal about that. However, there is a law which specifically stipulates that it is illegal for a foreign government to contribute to a presidential campaign. That is outright illegal. Now, now I want to be very clear here. Contributions are illegal, not necessarily aid. I actually read over the law. I forgot what specific law it is, but if you read the text of said law, it indicates that you cannot do it for contributions. Now, what the media has done, and what lots of pundits who should know better have done, is they've said, well, contributions is similar to aid, and aid is similar to do something for something. So it's a quid pro quo, therefore it's illegal. That's not what Trump was doing. First of all, I want to state again, quid pro quos should be encouraged to happen between the United States and allies. What would be grounds for impeachment is were Trump to collude or to work with some enemy, specifically an enemy of the United States, like China, as previously mentioned, or Russia, Iran, say, hey, you do X for me, and I will give you U.S. secrets. Or, you give me money. You donate to the Trump 2020 victory campaign, because Iranian money won't show up on the FEC report. And I will give you American launch codes. That's impeachable. That is the definition of impeachable right there. Now, the first problem, the first whistleblower, not so much the second, but the first whistleblower was only claiming secondhand knowledge. The great thing about a whistleblower is it's supposed to protect people with firsthand knowledge. So if I saw somebody personally do something egregious or wrong, I want whistleblower privileges. I want to have my identity protected. No one should know who I am, and I want to be safe. This is a person who is secondhand knowledge. So he believes that Trump did X. Did Trump actually do X? Well, this is the thing, and this is what really bothers me. We have all the evidence. Literally within days, Trump released a transcript of the call. You can read it for yourself. People have been, in fact, that's what makes so many alternative media outlets, in my opinion, so much better than New York Times and CNN and all these different groups, is because they're actually reading the transcript. That's part of their news outlet. They just read the transcript. And I won't be reading it here because I want you to read it for yourself if you haven't already, because there is really nothing there. In two separate parts of this conversation, which Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, was listening to the whole time, Trump says, hey, thank you so much for, doing your, for some rocket launcher, basically. They were basically offering military aid to Ukraine. That's what Trump was doing. That's what the United States has been doing and should be doing because Ukraine is kind of on the border with Russia. At the same time, he said, hey, can you do a favor for me? Could you look into the Biden Biden phenomenon? I'm definitely paraphrasing. But this is a pre-existing thing. And when I say Biden, I don't mean Joe Biden, I mean his son, Hunter Biden. He's not necessarily calling investigation Joe Biden. He's calling his son into investigation. Number one, it's not. Number two, he wasn't receiving in return financial benefit to the Trump 2020 campaign. And it really doesn't make sense. That's what Trump wanted because his war chest is doing exceedingly well. It doesn't make any sense that he would be doing this for more contributions. He's already rolling in dough, whereas the Democrats are struggling to finish paying off their debts from the last election. So it doesn't add up in that regard. The other regard is, well, my big problem is how the Democrats are going about doing that, as though this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Folks, I mean, there was a poll done by George Mason University, as a matter of fact, which revealed 53% of Americans are in favor of an impeachment inquiry. Now, I want to be clear here. There's a difference between an impeachment inquiry and the actual impeachment. Basically, that's an investigation. So 53% of Americans are in favor of an investigation. So that also means about 47% are not in favor of it. I want to keep that in mind. And that's only if polls are accurate. As I said earlier, I really do not trust polls. I think they're stupid. I do not trust polls. And with how the media is covering this, it's also quite egregious. New York Times says, what was the actual? The White House will stand its ground. That's what the New York Times reports. Well, yeah, you think the White House is just going to go, all right, impeach me, go for it. Just how it's just so weird what kind of leads and what kind of headlines they choose to do. In Financial Times says that Congress is dragging its feet for impeachment. Yeah, because it's really not as popular. See, the big problem with this George Mason University poll is, again, as I said, it's only for an investigation, which is not really that bad. The only problem I have with it is I think there should be also an investigation to the Democrats. You want to be, who have done just the same thing with other foreign heads of state. There's, like, for example, Adam Schiff, the House Intelligence Committee chairman, actually read a paragraph in the transcript before Trump released it that was utterly false, utterly made up. He's also stated that he has not had direct talk. He has not directly met with the whistleblower. He did indeed directly meet with the whistleblower prior to the whistleblower coming out. I mean, that, I think, deserves an investigation into it. I have no problem investigating Trump. I just want the same standards to be applied to Democrats. That's fine. I really don't think he has anything to hide. And here are my reasons. One, unlike during Bill Clinton and I believe during Nixon, they both set aside special staff to just focus on the PR, on making sure that everything was all hunky-dory concerning impeachment so that all the other staffers could focus on other stuff. Trump has not done that. Why? Because he doesn't think he's in trouble. And another reason is they immediately released the transcript. I mean, they had something like a dozen White House lawyers, maybe more, comb through these transcripts looking for just the remotest thing that would make Trump look bad. And being that they couldn't find it, it kind of gives ground to believe that this isn't going to hold up in court. I mean, it really, and if you read it for yourself, it really isn't that bad. Nothing of what they're accusing him of doing just seems to hold much weight whatsoever. So again, is the impeachment very popular? I really don't think that it's very popular. I think after the Mueller report, people are kind of done, and the fact has remained as it always will. If you really don't like the guy, just vote against him. And that's really the best poll in America, is who wins the 2020 election. That's the poll I trust. But even with a lot of election tampering, fake voting, people not really giving much, shall we say, proof of their that they're registered to vote. A lot of scandals have popped up specifically in LA, a couple other counties that have very much eroded my trust in our election system. But I do think that there is a bipartisan crackdown. So I really hope that turns up something. Anyway, moving away from stupid impeachment stuff that nobody, honest to goodness, nobody really cares about. I want to talk a little bit about the minimum wage, as I already did in the Fourth Estate. So I wrote a op-ed in the Fourth Estate arguing that the minimum wage hurts workers. And you can agree, disagree, whatever, but I really do, and I made the case for why it really does hurt workers. And oh, lo and behold, socialists got extremely upset at me. So I would have known. They didn't actually tweet. One person actually did tweet at me. Won't bother mentioning their name. But they got really upset at me that I bothered to write this, that I'm an evil Koch brother funded Nazi, well, they didn't say Nazi, but, and I would have invited them on the show, on my YouTube channel, to have a nice discussion about minimum wage. What is the best minimum wage for people? Which is really what we should be talking about. No, as it turns, you look through the comments, you look through what they had to say, really, I'm ugly. I don't have as many likes as they do, so no. Let me basically go through the whole minimum wage phenomenon, why I think the way I do, and all that. Effectively, the problem with raising the minimum wage is that inevitably business owners have to offset certain costs because they are just trying to maintain profits. I've also never understood how profits are bad. Anyone that ever says profits are bad, profits are evil, profits are this or that, well, is the opposite good? Is losses good? Is loss loving? Is that nice? I just don't understand. I've never understood when people claim profits are evil. Don't put profits over people. Profits are people. You cannot pay people unless you make a profit. If you are not making a profit, people will not get paid. It's not a very complex topic. So when you increase the minimum wage, or when there's some mandatory wage increase, you have to offset costs, usually in the form of laying off people, cutting hours, reducing amenities or benefits, making the place a nice place to work in, blah, 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 all stuff like that. And basically what I'm arguing here is, look, I don't know if you're aware, but outside of the one cafeteria, Southside, every now and then you see protesters protesting, as protesters always do, specifically for Sodexo, against Sodexo, which is the management group that basically hires all the workers that run the cafeteria and stuff. Now, I've had a friend that's worked with Sodexo, and yeah, they're not the best company. They have terrible management. They're not the greatest place to work. However, there are people that still work there. And they clearly are there by choice because I see them the next day. If it really was the devil's spawn of worst employment places ever, they would leave. There are other places that are hiring. And I understand, look, I've been jobless, I've been job searching. It's not fun. It's horrible. It's downright terrible to be job searching. But it's not as bad as, if it truly is a terrible, terrible, terrible place to work, then I would hope that they move on to better prospects. And now getting back to my article, what I'm effectively arguing is that when you increase that minimum wage, the first people that are going to get fired are the people that the management does not deem to offset the cost. Who's going to get fired? Probably going to be the people with mental disabilities. We see them there. They're working. They're good people. They're hardworking. They're really nice. I don't want to see them lose their job, but they probably will. They're probably going to be the first people to lose their job. This is why I'm so upset with the people who got mad on Twitter. I believe they're part of ROSE, some stupid acronym for revolutionary, blah, 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 and the bourgeoisie, blah, 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 stuff like that. They got really upset at me. They didn't really make any substantial arguments. I think their biggest argument was that I'm ugly. Um, so I feel bad for picking on people with who are slightly visually impaired, but well, that's their problem. Uh, so, I mean, if they claim to be so loving, they claim to be so adoring of the workers there, why don't they follow the facts? Why don't they see that they're clear historically? You show me a place where there has been a minimum wage increase, and there was a where people were where people who held minimum wage jobs all kept their jobs. Show me a place where job loss wasn't there. Every place where there was an increase in minimum wage, people who held the previous minimum wage, there was job loss. Every single time. You see in New York, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and in places abroad. It's true everywhere. It's not just true in America. You also see reduction in hours. So people, and I quoted in my article that in Seattle, the first place to raise the minimum wage to 15, it's, by the way, it hasn't even fully reached 15 in all places yet. They're still working on it. So the effects really haven't been, it's going to keep going until 2021. So they haven't seen the full effects there yet. But the, 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 they have from the actual article, it says, I'm going to quote myself, which sounds a little weird, but not that bad. The Washington Post reported after an increase to $15, workers in Seattle lost a net of $125 a month because of slashed hours. And you also get paid in things like medical and stuff like that. But getting back to the main point is all these angry, revolutionary people on Twitter and all that. First of all, I really don't care if you're not. I would care a little bit more if you had substantial evidence-based complaints, but being that none of them did, I really don't care about their complaints. But it's really heartbreaking, to be quite frank. It's just heartbreaking that they do not care about the mentally handicapped workers. I think it's kind of disgusting that they're more interested in reaffirming their biases because they just unthinkingly believe that a minimum wage will make everything all hearts and rainbows and better when the data has demonstrated, the facts have proven, it makes some people's lives worse. Who? As I point out, according to the Office of Congressional Budget, people most at risk are women. I thought they cared about women. People with mental disabilities, adults who do not have a high school diploma, and teenagers. So young people, women, people with mental disabilities, and people who do not have a high school diploma. Those are the people most at risk. Those are and you know who fits into several of those categories? Students. It's not so much. I really don't think these people truly. I don't think they hate the people I just mentioned, but what really bothers me and what I don't understand is why do they hate these people, or why are they unwilling to overcome whatever presuppositions they have about the minimum wage and just realize themselves, this actually will hurt some of my fellow students in addition to the workers. They're unwilling to engage in argument, and it's something I don't understand, and I think it's quite cowardice. Anyway, running out of time. I've had a really terrific and amazing time doing all this. Want to thank the what is this? Oh, WGMU. That's the place I really need to thank. Thank you so much for letting me hear, letting me talk, letting me, kind of just mess around and, just kind of say a few things that I think are really, really important and really worth talking about. So, huge thanks to WGMU. Thank you for all the people out here. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got for you today. Look forward to hearing from you all at some point. And Hope you guys take care.